Hey everyone, in this video I am going to show you something that's very important about UVs when baking characters. Before I'm going to address a question that I've had in my previous baking videos. When it comes to marmoset, you can do bake groups, and that would avoid the necessity pretty much of having to explode the mesh. The reason being is I've already finalized this character and I've already set it up as exploded, so I kind of wanted to show how that worked and how I do most of my characters that way. But I'm also going to show the bake groups in Marmoset once I finish the other asset that I'm making for another set of videos that I've planned. So yes, I'm going to address that, so stay tuned for that one. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about UVs, which is really important. Even if you're doing the bake groups, it's really important to have texture sets. Texture sets are what's going to define what kind of material you are going to use, whether it's in Unreal Engine or Unity or any other game engine for that matter. And texture sets, some people call it material IDs. I've heard many names. I just call it texture sets because that's what it says in Substance Painter. So let me explain a little bit of what that is. So if I go to my UV Unwrap modifier, I open the editor. This is a texture set. Everything that is within the 0 to 1 space, everything that you're seeing here is one texture set. Don't mind what's outside. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay? So as you can see, I only have the body. I don't have the head or the arms or anything like that. So if I were to go into my head and I do the same thing, I add the UVW unwrapped, you're gonna see that I have the face, I have the skin, and the other parts of the bodies that were not there before. I also have something outside, but we're gonna talk about that later. So this would be another texture set. So a texture set's defined to everything that's in the 0 to 1 space. So this would be one map. Even though this is one asset, it has two texture sets. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this guy and we're going to make two different meshes. So I'm going to leave this as number 1 and I'm going to make another one. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign materials. Again, some people call them material IDs. I just call it creating texture sets. But you can give it whatever name you want. It doesn't matter. The point is that you need to have two different material names for these to read up in Substance Painter or whatever game engine you're going to use in the end. And I'm going to show you the reasons why. That's actually why I make two of these. I want to pick the material. So as you can see, this one has one material for the body called body and another material for the head called skin. Okay, these are the two materials that conform this particular asset. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign one single material to everything to show you the difference and why doing this is very important if you want to have more than one texture set. So let's call this I'm just going to call everything, and let's assign this to both pieces. So now this piece is called everything and this one's called everything, and I can show you just by sampling. You're going to see that it goes all the way to here, and if I sample from the skin as well, it goes here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to export these two guys. I'm going to put them into Substance Painter, and I'm going to show you what happens with things like this and why this is so important. Alright, here I am in Substance Painter and I'm going to create my file. I'm actually going to pure metal roughness. It doesn't matter what you do here, this is just for testing purposes, so I'm just going to select. So I have two different files here. I have the Kinetic 2 sets, which is the one with two texture sets, which is the one that I've been using all along for baking, and I have Kinetic 1, which is the one that contains just one texture set, the one that I called everything. So I'm going to load this one in, and I click OK. And if I go, let me get my stylus, if I go here, you're gonna see that there's something called texture set list right here, and I have my body and I have my skin. I have my character actually divided into texture sets. So those are the two names that I previously gave my, whoops, sorry, my phone. Those are the two names that I previously gave my character. And the reason why I'm using these two names is because, as you can see, I have one single asset here, but I have two different texture sets, and this has two purposes. Number one, I can assign way more pixel density to places like the face and the skin, which I find are very important. And number two, it also serves to isolate. You can always mask things with opacity and whatnot, but this is an easier way to isolate things in Substance Painter. So let's say I wanted to, right now I don't have anything that's occluding anything that I want to paint, but let's say I do. So using this texture sets, I can just uncheck this and it disappears. So let's say I have different meshes on top of one another, and I want to get rid of one just so I can see what's going on. What I would do is just hide it here. And again, you could also do that with masking, which is fine too. I just find this to be an easier way to do this. And even if you're using the group by names baking and Marmoset toolbar, you still need this workflow if you want to use your bakes in Substance Painter and you want your character to function with different texture sets. It's fine if you want to have just one character and one texture sets. That's totally okay, and I've seen lots of artists do that. I just like to do this whenever I have the possibility to. Now, since we're here in Substance Painter, I am going to show you the reason why I have these materials here, or not materials, the meshes. And the reason why I have these UVs out here is because there's no need for them to be inside. Everything that you have here is occupying a space in the texture set, and the more space that you can assign to each UVs, the better. So again, these are UV shells, and the more space that you can assign to them is going to be better, because that means there's more pixels and your textures are going to look even better without the necessity of increasing the resolution for each texture. So things that are completely symmetrical, like let's say we're talking about the body. So right now the hand, which is pretty much a glove, is the same on one side than when it is on the other. So that's why I have it here, and I don't have both of them inside, because the reason why I have it here, let me actually switch to a color of let's go here. No, not material, base color. Let's put something we can really identify what it is. So because these two are symmetrical, I can paint here and it automatically transferred to the other side, which is pretty much outside in exactly the same position. I'm going to show you how to do this in 3D Studio Max. That should translate to any other software that you're using, like Blender or Maya. It's just Max is the one that I'm using. And not only I'm doing that with the hand, I am doing this with the knee pads as well, because they're pretty much the same. So as you can see, if I paint here and I don't have symmetry activated in Substance Painter, what I do is I paint here, and is going to paint on my UV shell that's outside of the 0 to 1 space. And same thing happens with the boots. And what other things do I have here? Oh, the strands. So it's like painting with symmetry, but the main purpose of this was not to get symmetry, it was only to have more texture space here, because the more texture space you can assign to UV shell, the better. And I can show you with the skin as well. I did the same thing. So I have, again, since I have face and skin, I have the arms, pretty much are the things that are out here, the arms and the rocks. So if I paint in this arm, you're going to see that it gets painted here, just because they're both in exactly the same position and it's outside. So it's like a symmetry without using symmetry, and it saves you on texture space. Okay, now I'm going to take you into Max, and I'm going to show you how to position the UV shells outside of 0 to 1 space in order to get this kind of symmetry. Okay, here I am in 3D Max again, and I'm actually going to just work with the body because it's pretty much the same workflow. So if you see it here, it's the same thing that I did for the skin. What I'm going to do is, actually I converted this to editable poly. I'm gonna add an unwrap modifier. And you're gonna see that I have my UVs laid out here. So one thing that I can do, that I usually do when making characters, is, let me collapse this. What I do when making characters is the final will be, when I'm unwrapping, will be like this. So let's say these things. Okay, these are the things that are mirrored. I think the shoe as well. So these things that are mirrored, I usually delete the ones from the other side. And after doing that, what I do is, and I'm actually doing the actions in reverse of what I usually do. I would do this as I'm building the low poly mesh. But just for the sake of demonstration on this asset, I'll have to do it in reverse. So pretty much detach these groups, and just FYI, this is something that applies only to Max users. If you're in 3D Max, every time you detach something, if you're using Max 2017 and after, this is going to happen. So every time you attach or detach something, your smoothing groups are going to go crazy, and pretty much you're going to get rid of the smoothing group. So what you should do is just go over it and just clear out, and I add one smoothing group, and everything is fine. If this doesn't work, because I found instances where this doesn't work, then all you need to do is add an edit poly modifier, and then you can do the smoothing groups again. Just because I've seen that not happen every single time. So now that I have these meshes here, I'm going to add another unwrap modifier and open my UV editor. And I want to symmetry everything onto this side, but I think I made a mistake. I need to symmetry this first before actually making the UVs. So I'm actually going to unhide this. And thing number one that we need to make sure is that our pivot is in the center. Just so everything is symmetrical and goes where it belongs, our pivots need to be in the center of the character. I usually work in the center of the universe. I just move this character for the sake of demonstration because I have the other one all the way over here. So a good recommendation is to always work in the center of the universe, so it'll be easier to manipulate things like symmetry and whatnot, especially in 3D Max. So I'm just going to add a symmetry modifier. I'm going to flip it. And I have my other pieces on the other side, so I'm just going to collapse it. And now I can add my UV unwrap. Sorry again, I usually don't do this in reverse. Now that I have a symmetry, you're going to see that I still have all my UV shells where they're supposed to be. And not outside like I used to. So the way that I get them outside is, what I'll do is I'm going to go and select by element. If you're using 3D Max, this is element toggle. And you click on this element, you're going to see that it's selected everything that's related to the glove. And it might look like it's grabbing both in the UV editor, but it's actually not. It's just grabbing one UV shell. When you use symmetry on every object, and you've already unwrapped, and it's not like all crazy here, if you've already unwrapped and you use symmetry after that, and your UV shells are going to be one on top of the other. So as you can see here, the UV shells are pretty much covering the ones from the right. Now what I'm going to do to make them go over here is just, number one, you have to have this activated. Number two, where you go is in the U. So U means this way, U means horizontal, and V means this way. So U is horizontal and V for vertical. That's a good way to remember. So I just press number one and press enter. So what this did is it placed the UV shells from this side exactly one tile next to 0 to 1 space. This is exactly one tile next to 0 to 1 space, and this is why whenever I paint here, I will paint on this side too. So let's do that for the knee pads. Go here, one, and it's right there, and it's keeping that UV unwrap, so nothing is overlapping, nothing is going crazy. It's keeping exactly the same position. It's just one tile to the right. So the other thing that was the shoe, one number, and again you see everything, it's keeping to where it should be. Alright, so that's a little bit about UVs. I know this is kind of like a very beginner kind of tutorial, but I feel that that's very important to know when you're baking characters, or when you're baking any asset that you want to have different texture sets. Now I'm going to show you what will happen if I bring this, if I bring the other one, which is this one right here. Whoops, not this one, this one. What will happen if I bring this one into Substance Painter with just one material name? Okay, here in, now you're gonna see what's up. Look at this craziness. Now the reason why this looks like this is because I have one material ID for everything pretty much, and everything is overlapping. So Substance Painter recognizes texture sets and is saying like, hey, this only has one texture set, so I'm actually going to cram everything into 0 to 1 space, and everything is going to look crazy like this. So this is why it's important to have the texture sets, unless you have a character that is unwrapped to be on one texture set. If you want your character to have one texture set, like I've done in the past, because there are clients that say like, hey, this character can only have one material, so I just do one texture set, and that's totally fine. But if you want your character to have different texture sets, make sure you name them, because otherwise this is going to happen. And even though this character is, it has two pieces, because if I go back to 3 Studio Max, you're gonna see that this character is comprised by two meshes. Even though he is comprised by two meshes, the fact that he has one material name, once you take it into Substance Painter, is going to do this, and I'm pretty sure you don't want this. So again, when you are creating the UVs for your character, just bear in mind that texture sets is something really important. Do you want to have your character with various texture sets? Or I think a better question would be, can you afford to have your character with various texture sets? If the answer is yes, then I would suggest to do it, because the more polygons that you can assign to a specific part of the mesh, the better. But if you can't, then make sure you unwrap everything and make everything into one texture sets. Otherwise, this is gonna happen. That was all for today. I guess I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. That really helps out the channel. And I'll see you later.